Welcome to the History in Focus channel. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss more videos like this one. At the exact moment of the explosion in Nagasaki on August 9, 1945, the Fat Man atomic cloud rose, bringing destruction and chaos. Over 70,000 lives were taken instantly as the city was consumed by fire and radiation. This image captures the moment when nuclear horror forever changed history. In 1941, Soviet soldier Eugen Stepanovich Kobitev took the left-hand photo on the day he left for war. 4 years later, in 1945, the portrait on the right revealed a transformed man. The empty gaze and marked face contrasted sharply with the vibrant youth stolen by the war. With raised hands and eyes filled with fear, a Jewish boy is captured by Nazi forces during the Warsaw Ghetto liquidation in 1943. An image marked by the sadism and cruelty of the Holocaust. A mother covers her face in shame after announcing the sale of her children in 1948 in Chicago. The shocking scene reflects the despair caused by extreme poverty in the post-war era. Unable to support them, she made a drastic decision, exposing the harsh reality of many American families at the time. With soot-covered faces and weary eyes, children pose in a coal mine in early 20th century United States. The photo reveals the harsh reality of child labor, where small hands endured exhausting workdays in dangerous conditions. These images spurred labor reforms against child labor. Two towering Indian guards from the early 20th century, wearing turbans and traditional attire, pose beside a British man who appears diminutive in comparison. Belgian miners being transported in metal cages in the early 20th century, a common practice in the coal mines of regions like Charleroi and Liège. Records like this serve as a reminder of the brutal conditions of the Industrial Revolution, where workers endured grueling hours in extreme heat, constant risk of collapse, and lung diseases. The story of this photo is as painful as it is impactful. In 1985, after the eruption of Nevado del Ruiz, Omaira Sanchez, a 13-year-old girl, was trapped in the debris and mud of her home near Armero, Colombia. For 3 days, she resisted while rescue teams struggled unsuccessfully to save her. Her death, captured by photographer Frank Fournier, shocked the world. "I wanted people to know who she was," he said. The 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami destroyed homes, separated families, and claimed more than 230,000 lives. The water, like an unstoppable giant, rushed forward as people fled from the inevitable. This image shows the construction and use of the Mammoth camera, one of the largest ever created in the late 19th century. Designed to capture high-resolution photos in large formats, it used glass plates as negatives and required a team to operate. It represents the technical advancement of photography and the effort to overcome the limitations of the era. During a 1967 protest against the Vietnam War in Washington, a young man challenges soldiers by offering flowers to their ready rifles. This image, taken at the height of the U.S. peace movement, symbolizes the opposition to war. At the time, anti-war protests intensified, drawing thousands of demonstrators questioning the human and financial costs of the conflict. Among the rubble of London during the 1940 Blitz, a young girl clutches her doll amidst the destruction of German bombings. The air campaign left around 43,000 dead and 139,000 injured. The inhumane conditions of an overcrowded cell in a Hong Kong prison during the 1950s. The gazes through the windows of this streetcar in New Orleans, captured by Robert Frank in the 1950s, tell the story of an America divided by racial segregation. Each face, separated by race, reflects a stark social reality. In this scene of oppression in the U.S., two segregated drinking fountains labeled white and colored reveal the cruel reality of segregation. These signs not only divided, but symbolized the inequality imposed by Jim Crow laws, marking a period of pain and resistance in the civil rights struggle. A small, fragile, and thin hand is held by that of a missionary, creating a poignant image that portrays the harsh reality of global inequalities. Taken in Uganda, the scene exposes the devastating contrast between the extreme poverty of sub-Saharan Africa and the aid efforts by humanitarian organizations. This simple gesture carries the weight of a continent fighting for survival and hope. One of the saddest and most shocking photos in history shows a child on the brink of death from starvation while a vulture patiently waits. Captured in 1993 in Sudan, it became a humanitarian landmark in the fight against hunger in Africa. This 1989 photo, taken during the Tiananmen Square massacre, captures the Tank Man, a lone man blocking a column of tanks in an act of courage. Carrying 2 shopping bags, he defied military advancement following violent government suppression of protests, which resulted in the deaths of approximately 300 people and injuries to 7,000. A mountain of bison skulls tells a grim story from the late 19th century in the United States. Millions of bison, a symbol of life for indigenous peoples, were slaughtered during westward expansion, leaving destruction in their wake and devastating indigenous cultures. In 1899, Nikola Tesla defied the impossible in his Colorado Springs laboratory. Surrounded by artificial 23-foot-long lightning bolts generated by 12 million volts, he tested wireless power transmission. The almost surreal scene captures the brilliance of a genius shaping the future amid storms of his own making. In this World War II image, a woman pushes an armored baby carriage while wearing a gas mask. Designed in England, the carriage was meant to protect children from potential poison gas attacks, reflecting the justified fear that gripped the population. Scratch marks on the walls of a gas chamber in Auschwitz, Poland, are remnants of the horrors of the Holocaust. Between 1940 and 1945, over 1.1 million people, mostly Jews, were murdered in the largest Nazi concentration camp. Zyklon B gas, originally a pesticide, was used in the gas chambers, while the marks attest to the victims' desperation. In a dark moment of American history, this image depicts members of the German-American Bund, who promoted Nazi ideals before the U.S. entered World War II. With swastikas alongside American flags, it reveals the internal divisions of a country on the brink of confronting Hitler's regime. A young black girl, kneeling as a human support, carries a white child on her back in a cruel portrait of the 19th century. The scene captures the dehumanization of slavery, where lives were reduced to servitude for the entertainment and comfort of others. At the height of the Vietnam War, the moment Colonel Nguyen Ngoc Loan executed Nguyen Van Liem at point-blank range was immortalized by Eddie Adams' lens. After winning the Pulitzer for the photo, Adams reflected, "The colonel killed the prisoner, and I killed the colonel with my camera." In 1992, the Carandiru massacre left deep scars in Brazil. During a police operation to suppress a prison riot, 101 inmates were killed, turning the most feared penitentiary in Latin America into the scene of a brutal tragedy. The incident made headlines worldwide, exposing the extreme violence within Brazil's prison system. In this 1937 photo, the Hindenburg airship bursts into flames while attempting to land in New Jersey, USA. The hydrogen explosion caused 36 deaths and marked the end of the airship era for transportation. The disaster, widely documented, shocked the world and changed the future of aviation. In 1943, during the Battle of Stalingrad, a Soviet soldier seeks solace in his faith, holding a crucifix. The battle was one of World War II's most pivotal moments, marking the resistance against the Nazi advance and resulting in approximately 2 million deaths. The photo depicts the devastating impact of the 2011 tsunami in Japan. Amid the wreckage, a woman sits desolate, surrounded by destruction. The magnitude 9.0 earthquake and tsunami caused about 15,899 deaths, over 6,000 injuries, and thousands of disappearances, leaving entire cities in ruins and a profound trail of sorrow. In 1945, these women had just been liberated from a concentration camp. Holding hands, a mother and her daughter run desperately, while others follow with tears and smiles of relief. During Prohibition in the United States, 1920-1933, federal agents destroyed barrels of alcoholic beverages, pouring the liquid out of this building's windows. The improvised cascade symbolized the fight against alcohol in an era marked by smuggling and public resistance. This striking image shows a priest offering comfort to a kneeling man moments before his execution in 1959 during the Cuban Revolution. Surrounded by soldiers and attentive gazes, the moment carries the weight of Cuba's political transformations during that historic period. The photo, choreographed to exude absolute power, represents the peak of Nazi propaganda. Every detail reinforces the oppressive control and cult of leadership that plunged the world into chaos and destruction. Surrounded by rows of saluting soldiers and Nazi banners, Hitler ascends triumphantly a staircase in Nuremberg during the 1930s. During the Troubles in Northern Ireland, 1968-1998, a young man confronts a British soldier, staring down the barrel of a rifle aimed at his face. This image represents the conflict between Unionists, predominantly Protestant, who supported ties with the United Kingdom, and Republicans, mostly Catholic, who sought reunification with Ireland. The period claimed more than 3,000 lives in a political, religious, and cultural war. In this photo, metal cages attached to windows were used in cities like London to expose children to fresh air and sunlight. Doctors of the time recommended this practice in urban areas with limited outdoor space, but today, the idea seems dangerous, reflecting contrasts between eras. The devastation of Hiroshima after the nuclear bombing on August 6, 1945, marked the beginning of a new and frightening chapter in human history. Only ruins and shadows remain as witnesses to the disaster. It is estimated that about 70,000 people died in the atomic bomb explosion. However, the total death toll may be higher considering the long-term effects of radiation. Martin Luther King Jr. is seen with his son removing the remains of a burned cross in his yard in 1960 during the civil rights struggle. The act of racist intimidation is a manifestation of the hatred faced by the civil rights leader as he and his family stood firm in the fight against segregation and injustice in the United States. An indigenous woman protecting her child while resisting advancing police during a land eviction in the Amazon in 2014. The scene, marked by tension and violence, highlights the struggle of indigenous peoples for their rights and the preservation of their territories against economic exploitation. 11 workers casually eat lunch on a steel beam, suspended hundreds of feet above New York City streets during the construction of Rockefeller Center in 1932. Captured during the Great Depression, the image symbolizes resilience and risk. A protester falls while being pursued by police through the streets of Rio de Janeiro during Brazil's military dictatorship, which lasted from 1964 to 1985. The photo reveals the brutal repression of student and popular movements that dared to confront the authoritarian regime, marking a dark period in Brazilian history. This image of a socialist guerrilla wearing a beret and improvised civilian attire became a symbol of the Sandinista revolution that fought against U.S.-backed Contras, while the Sandinistas were supported by the USSR, eventually toppling the Nicaraguan dictatorship. The photo gained worldwide prominence, appearing on T-shirts, posters, and inspiring social movements and artists. In May 1945, Soviet soldiers raised the Soviet Union's flag over the Reichstag in Berlin, symbolizing victory over Nazi Germany and the end of World War II in Europe. This iconic image represents not only Soviet triumph, but also immense sacrifice. About 20 million Soviets lost their lives in the conflict, with nearly every family suffering the loss of at least one loved one. On September 11, 1973, Salvador Allende is seen for the last time, armed and surrounded by allies in La Moneda Palace during the Chilean military coup. This image captures his final moments, immortalizing the fight for Chilean democracy against the violence that initiated Augusto Pinochet's dictatorship. During the 1968 Olympics, in an act of courage and resistance, athletes Tommy Smith and John Carlos raised their clenched fists with black gloves on the podium while lowering their heads for the U.S. national anthem, symbolizing the fight for civil rights for black people in the U.S. This was a few months after the death of Martin Luther King Jr. During the Iraq War, a mother soldier's reunion with her daughter after months of separation evokes deep emotion. Kneeling and in tears, she embraces the child as if trying to recover lost time. In the Spanish Civil War, 1936-1939, this photo, titled "The Falling Soldier," captures a Republican combatant at the moment he was allegedly struck. Iconic in wartime propaganda, the image is subject to debates over its authenticity, highlighting the role of photography in shaping historical narratives during one of the most documented conflicts. The gaze of Florence Owens Thompson bears the weight of a generation devastated by the Great Depression. Taken in 1936, her image became an emblem of resilience amid poverty and suffering. This iconic 1965 photo shows Muhammad Ali, then the world heavyweight champion, towering over Sonny Liston after knocking him down with a powerful punch in the first round. Konrad Schumann, an East German soldier, was photographed leaping over barbed wire to the western side of Berlin in 1961. This fence was the early stage of the Berlin Wall, built to prevent escapes to the west. After his jump, he was rushed away by Western agents, becoming one of the first documented defectors of the wall. 6 U.S. Marines raised the American flag on Mount Suribachi, Iwo Jima, during World War II. This scene occurred in 1945 during one of the Pacific Theater's fiercest battles. The island was strategically important to the Allies due to its proximity to Japan. Out of 70,000 American soldiers involved, nearly 7,000 were killed in combat. The photo later inspired the Marine Corps War Memorial in Arlington. In the heart of Hong Kong, the Kowloon walled city rose as a labyrinth of lives crammed amidst chaos, with 14-story buildings stacked on one another like a living organism. Over 50,000 people lived in just 6.4 acres. The walled city was demolished in 1993 after the 1984 Sino-British Joint Declaration. In March 1979 in Tehran, thousands of women took to the streets, united in courage and hope, to protest the imposition of mandatory hijabs after the Islamic Revolution. The new laws restricted their freedoms, but this marked the beginning of the fight for equality and dignity in Iran. With a hidden camera, Louis Hine disguised himself as a vendor to document child labor in factories. His famous photo of Sadie Pfeiffer operating a cotton machine exposed the cruelty of child exploitation, contributing to legislative changes that reduced child labor in the U.S. between 1910 and 1920. An elderly Armenian woman wrapped in a traditional shawl holds an AK-47 rifle, symbolizing the desperate fight of civilians to protect their land. During the 1990s conflict between Armenia and Azerbaijan, known as the Nagorno-Karabakh War, civilians were drawn into the violent struggle. A Bosnian war refugee in 1992 holds a photo of his children, tears in his eyes, showing an expression of pain and despair. Before the deadly mass known as the elephant's foot, a technician in a protective suit records the aftermath of the 1986 Chernobyl disaster. This highly radioactive formation was lethal within minutes of exposure, symbolizing the invisible dangers and destruction caused by the nuclear meltdown. A Soviet World War II veteran, an amputee, leans before the eternal flame at a memorial. Scarred by war, he pays tribute to his fallen comrades. An endless line of unemployed men stretches through the streets of New York City during the Great Depression of the 1930s. The scene is a poignant portrayal of the struggle for survival during one of the darkest periods in U.S. history. Cats leap through the air, a wave of water crosses the frame, and Salvador Dali appears frozen amid the surreal chaos. This spectacular photo captures the essence of Dali's extravagant mind. Without digital tricks, the image required dozens of attempts to achieve the impossible, immortalizing the genius of surrealism. Thousands of people crowd the Yarmouk refugee camp in Syria in 2014, surrounded by dark ruins and desperate faces. Hungry and exhausted, men, women, and children cling to a thread of hope amid the destruction of the civil war. A starving polar bear balances on a drifting ice block in the Arctic, a painful image of the impact of climate change. Melting polar ice drastically reduces the habitats of these animals, making hunting difficult and leaving them vulnerable to starvation. This scene serves as an urgent warning of the irreversible effects of human actions on the planet. The photo depicts a Cuban hospital in the 1990s during the Special Period, a crisis caused by the collapse of the Soviet Union, Cuba's main economic ally. Lacking basic resources, health professionals were forced to improvise with outdated equipment and scarce materials. Kirby, one of the millions of victims of the AIDS epidemic, says a painful farewell, surrounded by his family in his final moments. The photograph became a milestone in combating the stigma of the disease, highlighting the global impact of AIDS and the need for awareness in a time marked by prejudice and misinformation. This seemingly ancient photo captures the last public execution by guillotine, where serial killer Eugen Weidmann was condemned to death on June 17, 1939. While many view the guillotine as archaic, the French continued using it until 1977. Far beyond their iconic heads, what many do not know is that the Moai statues on Easter Island have entire bodies carved beneath the ground. Excavations like this reveal the full scale of these statues, created by the Rapa Nui people between the 13th and 16th centuries, challenging modern understanding of their construction, transportation, and purpose. During a protest in the U.S. in 1992, this image captured a boy dressed in Ku Klux Klan attire touching a black police officer's shield. The KKK, founded in 1865, was responsible for decades of racial violence and intimidation. Although its power diminished over the 20th century, its racist ideals still leave traces in some parts of the country. An American soldier wades through the waters of Omaha Beach on D-Day, June 6, 1944. Part of the largest amphibious operation in history, the invasion involved 156,000 Allied troops and marked the beginning of Europe's liberation. Omaha Beach, heavily defended by the Germans, became synonymous with intense resistance and high casualties. The March on Washington in 1963 brought together over 250,000 people, demanding racial equality and an end to discrimination. The event, marked by Martin Luther King Jr.'s "I Have a Dream" speech, pressured Congress to pass the Civil Rights Act of 1964. In this photo, the Washington Monument reflects in a young man's sunglasses. In the early 20th century, blind individuals in U.S. and European cities used signs like this to identify their condition, often required by official licenses for begging. These licenses reflected state control over the most vulnerable, highlighting the lack of social policies. During the Great Depression, this image shows an African-American domestic worker with cleaning tools in front of the U.S. flag. At the time, black women formed the backbone of the domestic workforce, enduring grueling hours and low pay. The precise organization and sheer abundance of products in this image illustrate the impact of 20th century consumerism. Supermarkets like this grew with urbanization and mass production, offering convenience and low prices. The culture of sales, such as 99 cents, became a hallmark of capitalism, redefining shopping habits and encouraging large-scale consumption. In the late 19th century, New York City tenements housed thousands of immigrants in precarious conditions. This photo shows a typical alleyway with narrow, overcrowded streets. These areas were hotbeds of disease and violence, prompting housing reforms in the early 20th century. Photographers and journalists helped expose this reality, pushing for change. Cyclone Nargis in 2008 devastated Myanmar with winds of 134 miles per hour and floods that destroyed entire villages. Over 138,000 people died and millions were left homeless. It was the worst natural disaster in the country's history. the slow government response drew international criticism, complicating the delivery of humanitarian aid and worsening the tragedy. During a flood in India, a man crosses turbulent waters carrying kittens in a basket to keep them dry. Seasonal floods in the region displace millions of people and impact both human and animal lives. This scene underscores the coexistence and importance of local fauna amid South Asia's environmental challenges. For more than 50 years, Patricia Cheshire's family has searched for answers about her whereabouts. Missing since 1969 at the age of 12, her photo and an age-progressed rendering are part of this National Center for Missing and Exploited Children campaign. Since 1984, the center has used advanced techniques to help locate missing individuals, increasing the chances of reuniting families even decades after a disappearance. In 2009, Diego Frazão Torquato, then 12 years old, moved the nation by playing the violin at the funeral of his mentor and Afro-reggae coordinator, Evandro João da Silva, who was murdered during a robbery in Rio de Janeiro. In 1984, Sharbat Gula was photographed in a refugee camp in Pakistan during the Soviet-Afghan War. Her image became famous as the cover of National Geographic in 1985, becoming an iconic moment in photojournalism. Buzz Aldrin, the second man to walk on the moon, was photographed during the Apollo 11 mission on July 20, 1969. The reflection in his helmet's visor shows Neil Armstrong, the lunar module, and the lunar horizon. The mission marked the height of the space race between the U.S. and the USSR, fulfilling Kennedy's goal of landing humans on the moon before the end of the 1960s. The deep scars on this Hutu man's body reveal the brutality of the Rwandan genocide in 1994. In just 100 days, about 800,000 people, primarily of the Tutsi ethnicity, were mercilessly killed, while concentration camps and torture sites spread terror and suffering. This image is not just a testament to cruelty, but a reminder of the devastating impact of hate and intolerance, leaving eternal marks on the bodies and souls of a devastated people.